I send out a newsletter in English every 2 weeks, in French every week. And in it, what I do essentially is I try to highlight some of the articles that I find interesting that with regards to digital marketing for travel and hospitality practitioners. So always 3 to 4 articles that I share that say, I think this should be interesting, like a new feature in Instagram, or there's something happening here with Google. So if you're interested, and you can check out the rest of the stuff I do. I've been doing this for almost, more than 25 years in the travel industry, but giving out conferences, training, and consulting for the past 10 years, actually full-time as a consultant. So I've seen a lot of the stuff, and it changes every day. So never a dull moment in this business, I'll tell you this much. And the past 18 months has been particularly something. So what we're going to talk about throughout this next hour together is what I like to call the holy trinity of digital marketing. And we'll break it up into the 3 pillars of that trinity, which is 1, your website. So we'll talk about how you can make sure your website is up to speed and it's performant. What are you doing with terms of relationship marketing, i.e. sending out newsletters? And the 3rd pillar is social media and storytelling, how we can use that to get our message across and make sure we get more business, make sure we get more employees. There's many reasons why we'd be active on social media. So Q&A at the end, as we said, but also throughout. So Desiree will tell me if you put a comment into the chat with regards to something I might mention, if I speak too fast, or I use an acronym, something you want to make sure I can repeat or clarify, please do not hesitate. We're a small group, so let's do this informally and have this conversation if you have questions along the way. Okie doke. So I like to present this slide more to sort of showcase or summarize the galaxy of the stars of what it looks like in the ecosystem today where the travel brand may be. It used to be many years ago, 20, 30 years ago, that it was very unidirectional, right? It was very linear. As a brand, you'd put an ad on TV and then people would see your ad and then they'd pick up the phone and they'd call you or they'd book something. Or in travel, you'd go to your travel agency, you'd get a brochure and you go to talk to your agent and then book it and then do the trip. However, nowadays it's, past 15, 20 years with the web, social media, it's a much more exploded system. Consumers now will engage with other content generated by other users. We'll go on blogs, we'll go on Expedia, we'll go on TripAdvisor. So sometimes we end up booking a trip, we end up booking things without even going directly to the website of the brand or the product. It does happen. Just think of when you book a trip to go down south, for example. Sometimes you'll just go on a website of Sunwing, or you'll go maybe on, lastminute.com kind of deal. Then you're going to book a week in Cuba, and then you just go and you'll look at some of the reviews, and you're not necessarily going to go to the hotel's website directly. Same thing with on Amazon, on eBay, and different places like that, where we tend to shop without necessarily going directly to the seller itself. So that's the challenge we've got. Now, the message I'm going to put across right now, and I'll make sure to repeat it later on, you don't have to be everywhere. So that's also sort of one of the first big urban legends that we have to, or myth that we need to be careful with. There's a lot of platforms, there's a lot of social media, but at the end of the day, we're going to need to prioritize where is your target market mostly active, where do you need to be? And this is why we're going to focus on this digital marketing holy trinity that I was referring to. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about the importance of the website. So do you have a website, and is it transactional? I mean, those are 2 very simple questions to which I don't necessarily have simple answers. And sometimes people tell me, we don't even have a website, mister, or we do, but it's, it was done 8 years ago and it's not really mobile responsive. So it needs to be, on average, a website life expectancy is anywhere between 3 to 5 years. So knowing that, why? And it's not because it's garbage or it's no longer works. It's just that the algorithms, the way Google works, the way as consumers, the way we behave and we search online evolves. So the way your website was built back in 2012 made sense for a couple of years, but in 2021, we need to adapt and we need to change. We need to have different ways of showing images, of presenting, on the menu and things like that. So the website will be something we'll be focusing on to make sure that if people go online, because today in travel and most industry, but in travel, it's something like 96% of people will start their travel decision-making process online. So we're going to go and, if you're looking for a restaurant over the weekend, or you want to book a trip, or you want to go into an art gallery, you're going to go online and do a search. And I keep referring to Google, and I will refer to Google throughout this presentation, simply because they have 92% of the worldwide market right now. So, I mean, sure, I could talk about Microsoft Bing, or I could talk about Yahoo, but I mean, it's very marginal. So website, what do we do in terms of SEO, search engine optimization? That is, are we using the proper keywords? And we'll get back to that. But I mean, how do you optimize your website to make sure it appears highly in the natural results that people will do? And when you can't do that naturally, we tend to pay. Thus, we call that SEM, search engine marketing. So campaigns with Google Ads, for example, to make sure that whenever people do a research online, well, if you can't appear highly naturally or organically because of your website that might not be as competitive, well, at least you can maybe do an ad campaign to show up amongst the first paid results that will appear on the screen, whether it's a mobile screen or a desktop screen. So website, very important. We'll get back to it in a minute. Then there's a second pillar, which is email. Email marketing. Do we got the permission? Are we respecting the laws that apply here in Canada to make sure that we have the permission to send them a communication, whether it's a text message, whether it's an email? How often do you do it? Are you automating some of your processes? So whenever someone reserves with your hotel, your restaurant, I was at a museum yesterday, and it was fabulous. I mean, I booked 3 days ago to go to this exhibit, and I got an email the day before to say, hey, you're booked for tomorrow. Don't forget about your vaccine passport. And this is the address where it's happening. And yesterday morning, I got a text message reminding me that I needed this and that. And then this morning, which is the day after the event, I got a little text message that wanted to see about my satisfaction. How do I like it? Do I want to share it? So, prior, during, and afterwards, basically that whole relationship marketing component, super important, because we tend to focus on acquisition, which we do through the website and through social media, but we sometimes underestimate all the power of loyalty and retention that goes through email marketing, amongst other techniques. And then, of course, the third pillar, which is social media, super important. How are we using them? Again, you're seeing here pretty much the key social networks that exist out there. You do not have to be everywhere. If you don't cater to youth, maybe you don't need to be on TikTok. If you don't have any videos, or video is not part of your game, then maybe YouTube is not necessarily adequate. So basically, you see the possibilities there, but you want to make sure you understand where your target market is active, so that ideally you are as well with a corporate account or as personal profile on LinkedIn, for example, to share information accordingly, right? So we'll get back to those, but these are really the three main pillars of what we'll be discussing in this presentation today. Now, what's good to know is that the traveler has changed. This is a stat that came from last year. It was basically, they interviewed, I think it was actually earlier in 2021, they interviewed over 10,000 consumers to sort of see what were the travel intentions were. And this is no surprise. You've seen it in 2020. You've seen it in 2021. It's essentially a domestic market thing. Until such time as borders open up again. We're reopening up at least somewhat. Well, the provincial borders have gone down. We're reopening towards Americans since beginning of August, since beginning of September to international. It remains very much in flux due to, as we know, the fourth wave of the variant that is impacting, the impressions that we have, and we still have all these requirements of tests, the PCR tests that need to be done, and the quarantine that still apply in some countries. So it remains very much so. So this is why, yes, revenge travel is a thing. It's happening. People have been waiting or putting money aside for the past year and a half, waiting to travel again. They have traveled domestically, but we are seeing that the demand, there will be a lot of pent-up demand. And so it's our job as marketers to see how we can tap into that pent-up demand. And for those of you who have experienced more domestic travel in the past 2 years, it's how do you capture the addresses, the email addresses or the physical addresses of these people, so you can send them information and you can retain them and have some loyalty over the next 2-3 years, when maybe Canadians will want to go abroad and we'll have less of our domestic market. And there might be a little bit of a gap. That's what I call the 2022 donut, where I'm afraid that we might have that whiplash effect that a lot of us are going to want to go outside of the country and might not compensate for those that are coming in that might spend more, but maybe there's less of them coming in. It's still a big question mark. I don't know it. Maybe you don't know it either, but questions that we need to ask ourselves. So you do have some data that's on the slide. I'm going to go over it quickly, or rather we're going to skip it because you have it in the slide, but it does show that the demand is strong, but there's a big caveat. A big caveat also, and this, I love this quote from Peter Drucker, marketing guru, management guru rather, who says the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, it's to act with yesterday's logic. And for me, the best example of that is, I don't know if you saw, there's an Expedia study that came out a couple of weeks ago. It was in August, that essentially said that for the very first time, I mean, they've been doing these surveys for over 20, 30 years. And we all know that price is usually the number one thing that travelers will look at when they're shopping online. They want to do a trip, like the rates, right? Price, it's logical. You want to know how much it's going to cost. Well, price is now, it has gone down to the third most important variable. Number one being the flexibility in booking a trip. And number two are the guarantees in place if you're going to book a trip. So flexibility, what does that mean? On your website, are you talking about what happens if there's borders closed down, or there's fourth wave and there's no guarantee, there's no, how are you handling the pandemic? How are you handling the situation to make sure that I'd like to reserve, but I'm not so sure if I change my mind, if I want to stay at home, am I going to recuperate my money? A lot of us lost money in travel vouchers or on airlines and things like that in the past year and a half. So there's especially in Canada, which we've been hit harder than other countries. So a lot of us are still wary of putting our credit card and booking a trip. And the second part is the guarantee. If you do book a trip, do you have a guarantee that you're gonna get your money back? I say this to you, and I have a perfect anecdote for that. Is I was supposed to go last couple of days. I was supposed to be in BC for an event, a race that was going to take place in the Okanagan, and it was canceled. It was actually postponed to 2022. But I'm still waiting on Air Canada to get, and this is over 2 weeks now that I haven't heard back, to see if I'm going to get a voucher or some kind of credit. And I'm not getting the money back on the event itself. They're postponing it or giving me a credit for 2022. So you're seeing that, and that's it's close to $1,000 if I look at the airline and the event itself. So I'm going to think twice about next time I book something. So knowing that it's not just about the rate, it's not on your website, on your brochures and things like that. We have to really focus on that aspect, that today's consumer is really concerned about safety, is really concerned about the flexibility. If I'm going to book something, what are the guarantees? Should I change my mind, or should there be an event or fourth wave or fifth wave or whatever that might put my money in jeopardy, or my reservation in jeopardy, right? So with that in mind, we're going to look at the first pillar and look at maybe 5 aspects that you'll want to focus on when it comes to your website. What can you do to make sure that your website, concretely speaking, is up to par? So we're going to look at what you can do with Google My Business, what you can do on your website per se. There's also partner sites, because it's not just about your website. And then we're going to talk about the importance of images and content, which segues into social media. And then SEO, what can you do in terms of search engine optimization to make sure your website pops up whenever people make a search online for your product or your service or something that your organization offers. Then you want to make sure you appear in the natural results so that people actually find you online, call you up, book online, or request a brochure or fill up a form, whatever the call to action may be on your website. All right, so Google My Business is incredibly important. I don't know how much I can insist on this. If as of this day, you do not manage your account or you do not manage your presence on Google My Business, by all means, this will be the one thing you will have picked up from this webinar. But you really need to be managing your presence on Google. Google My Business is everything that relates to your Google Maps, when are you open, how can I find you, what are the itineraries, how can I reach you by phone, your website. It's everything that relates to Google that can be managed through this account that's called Google My Business. So when you get into here, you're basically going to be able to manage reviews, for example. So if someone leaves a review about a great experience or a so-so experience, if you want to answer to them, which you need to do, you'll do that through Google My Business. People leave images, sometimes wrongly so. It might be of a competitor or somewhere else. You can actually signal them, or you can manage your own pictures. Make sure, are you open up on Thanksgiving? Are you open on Labor Day? Are you open on Halloween? You need to manage that reality as well. Everything that's here, you will need to do through Google My Business. So that's really important, and I can't insist enough to make sure you do that. You'll also want to make sure that I just want to make sure I'm not seeing, right. You want to update your website information. This is an example from the Germain Hotels, and I could have taken any website, but you obviously see that they have information related to COVID-19. I was actually talking to a hotelier recently. It was beginning of the summer, and we looked at their Google Analytics for the year 2020, and the second most popular page on their website after the homepage was the COVID-19 section. So they actually had a tab on their website that was about COVID-19, how they put into practice, the cleanliness and this and that, and what they do regarding this situation. And that was the second most popular page on their website, before rooms, before packages, before the career, before blog section. That's what people, so it was a living proof that people read that information. They want to check it out. So I'm always amazed, and I've seen it many times this summertime, when I go to a website and there is zero mention about COVID-19. It's like the pandemic is not hitting that company or that organization. So you need to have some kind of information, even if it's just to say, a little pop-up that says, here's how we're handling it. It will go away, hopefully, one day. But for now, people are avidly looking into that information. So are you open? Are you closed? Are you doing online orders? Are you doing deliveries? Business models have changed in the past 18 months. It needs to be on your website. You need to make sure it's being reflected. So this is another example from the Sutton Place Hotel. So I'm not going to delve on this, but you see here how exactly they put the information as well. But you also want to make sure you look at partner sites. So partner sites will be, if you're a hotelier, for example, how is the information being reflected about your organization on Expedia, on Booking, on TripAdvisor, and Trip.com and similar sites. If you're a restaurant, how are things on Libro or on OpenTable? Is the information adequate with regards, again, I know here in Quebec, we have the vaccine pass. You might not have in your province, but more and more provinces now are starting to discuss that. Well, if it is in place, is that information not only present on your own website, on your own social media, but also on Google My Business? You want to make sure it's there. And on partner sites of people who might be handling the requests and the reservations, or the information, if you're a Chamber of Commerce, anywhere where there's people that might be sending referral traffic, organizations sending referral traffic to your site, you want to make sure that the information they have on their website is up to date. I do realize it's a workload, but it does come with the territory, and you want to make sure, at least for the main sites that send you business, that you have this information that's adequate and up to date. You also want to make sure you review the images and the content that's on your site. So text for sure, but images. And I like this visual, right? I'm like, so what's wrong with this picture? Well, with these pictures, I could say, right? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with these pictures, right? I mean, there's, it's on the left, there's someone serving burgers and whatnot to this nice couple. At the bottom, you have this lovely group enjoying a beer and wine. On the right-hand side, you have people attending some kind of show, some kind of event, right? However, these pictures are all worthy of 2019 and before, okay? They do not reflect the reality since 2020. You cannot use similar pictures on your website today. You can't. You have to adapt to the reality it is today. So it would be something more like this. I mean, I know it's, like, oh, come on, people. Yes, that's the way it is now. That's the way things are happening in businesses. So maybe the people at the table are without the mask, but the gentleman serving them is wearing the mask, just like as we see at the bottom as well downstairs. I mean, in the bottom of the picture. On the right-hand side, you see people attending a show because some places are starting to have more festivals and events taking place, but maybe the mask is mandatory. So then have an image that represents that. So very important also to have that sensibility, and there's a sense of equilibrium as well. I mean, yeah, I mean, you do want to have pictures of people enjoying themselves together without the mask, but if you're having someone serving them who has to be wearing the mask, then obviously the pictures need to reflect that reality. So this is definitely something you need to look into. So you'll want to rethink your content, and that means how you promote yourselves, not just on your website, I mean, the text, the visuals, but also, and here's an example. This is actually from Google My Business. Did you know you can post, depending on the category? I know that sometimes restaurants can, but hotels can't have a post, but you can actually, in this case, promote the fact that, hey, you're open, you're taking orders. So that post, see, for example, here got viewed by close to 1,000 people, right? So you're able to use videos, images, text. We'll see with social media, it goes into Reels and TikToks and whatnot. Make sure that you adapt and you use the different types of content that will appeal to your target audience. And finally, when it comes to working your SEO, you need to really work on some elements that are more technical. And I'm not going to delve into this because I do a 1-hour webinar just on this topic, which is about search engine optimization, the technical aspect of it. So I'm not going to lose you with this here today, but it is making sure that you're using the right words or keywords that we call that are the same that the user might be typing or using verbally in their audio search. And then you want to also build your website with the proper titles, meta description, links to ensure that you're being as performant, as optimized, and responding to the people's queries so that it makes it that Google goes, hey, if someone is looking for a berry farm in Winnipeg, then I've got this website here that responds to that query, right? But those words need to be used on the website in particular. So you're seeing here different elements. The uniqueness of the content. Is the content that you have on your website satisfying what the intention of the user is, but with the keywords they're typing, the links that you have, the speed of your website is super important. Is it mobile optimized? So is it built for different devices? The freshness of contents. If you only go to your website once a year to put the rates for 2021, and then you're going to come back in the spring of 2022, then obviously that's a website that's got less fresh content, and then will get somewhat penalized by Google and the search engines accordingly. But if you have a blog on your website with a new article once a month or a couple of times a year, then those are all more reasons or more variables that play in your favor. So what we'll do here is I call it the Pepsi challenge. It's just 2 little tests, right? So I'm going to ask you to open up another tab, if you can, on your computer, and you're going to type Google Page Speed Insights. Okay, so as you see it on the screen, Page Speed Insights, and I will ask you to enter the website URL for your website. So mycompany.com, right? And then what that's going to do is it's going to deliver to you how Google perceives how fast your site is on the desktop and on mobile. Some of you might be in for a rude awakening. I say because I've conducted over 200 website audits in the past year alone. Even my website on mobile, it's slower than it should be. Desktop, it's much better. It's always the case. On mobile, it's a lot more tough to be performant according to Google, because as mobile users, we're a lot less patient. So while I'm talking to you, some of you might have done the test. Some of you can share the results in the chat. and we'll get to it at the end. But you're seeing, and if you go further down in the page, it's going to tell you what might be problematic with your website. It might be often it's because images are being used that are too heavy. Sometimes it's about the JavaScript, or sometimes the way the website is built. There's a lot of technical variables, again, that I don't want to go into today, but this is just one component. So you see, if your site doesn't perform so well in searches, sometimes it's simply because it's a slow site. As simple as that, right? As simple and as complex also to resolve, but nevertheless. So that's one first element I wanted to see with you, is taking that page speed insights test together. The other one I would like to do, again, if you've got that tab open, you can either do another search or open up another tab. But we're going to see how Google perceives your website. Is it mobile friendly or is it not? A very simple test once again. So for this, you're going to go to Google mobile friendly test and enter once again the URL that you want to test. So you can do it for your homepage. You can do it for a specific page on your site, maybe the transactional page or the one that's got the packages. So it's every URL. Sometimes some pages are mobile friendly, others are not. It's not always the whole site that is. It usually should be, but it's not always the case. So again, what is Google telling you? I'm hoping that 100% of you who do that test out there will have great. Google's telling me that my site is mobile friendly. But if it's not, that's a big problem. And nowadays in 2021, I mean, Google has been penalizing in searches if you're not mobile friendly since 2019. So, I mean, this is not new. This has already been for a while. So it's not just about being mobile friendly. Now there's websites that are even mobile first. I mean, we design them because we realize that 60, 70, sometimes 80% of our clientele or the traffic is actually mobile device. And then there's a minority that go through a desktop or a tablet. So I'm seeing comments in the chats. I don't know. Yeah, okay, so that's cool. So some people are at 60, someone's at 35. 35 is not dramatic if it's mobile. If on desktop you've got 35 and you got less on mobile, then that might be a reason to worry. But 35 on mobile, I've seen a lot worse. I've seen like 14, 12, 8, 4, literally. So, and again, you have to take that with a grain of salt. These are tests that are conducted. Sometimes they change on a daily basis. It can be for a variety of reasons. It could be also that the server you're working with or the hosting that you have on is slower that day. So got to take it with a certain grain of salt. But nevertheless, if you've got like 12 as a result, then obviously that's not looking so good. Right. So we do have someone here who's got a 14. So there you go. You found something you need to work on today during this webinar, the speed of your website. And again, these are not easy solutions, but at least we're flagging some issue or potential issues for your website. Maybe you already knew of it. Maybe you didn't. So also mobile friendliness test. I don't know if any of you got a chance to do it. Again, I'm hoping that 100% of you who are here attending today are being mobile friendly. That's what we hope for. Okay, excellent. All right, so that was the first pillar, website. I mean, I could go on and on just for that. Like SEO, I could do a 1 hour webinar and I do a half-day training just on SEO. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we could deliver in that. At least we got a glimpse of some elements that we can touch upon. The second pillar we discussed was all about how do you get that ongoing conversation with those clients, especially if the domestic clientele was not necessarily a big strength in the past, or it has been particularly in the past 2 years, and you want to keep them moving forward. You got to capture an email address, or you got to capture some kind of, their phone number, so you can send them text messages. Although, in all honesty, it's a plan B. It's always a least preferred mode of communication. It's a more intrusive mode of communication. Again, this is not my opinion. It's how it's being perceived out there. There's lots of studies that show and demonstrate that. Email is the number one tool, and sending out either email blasts or newsletters on a regular basis, or automating according to reservation processes and whatnot, is really what you want to do. So is there on your website a spot, can I see that from the get-go, where you're inviting me to subscribe to your mailing list or to your newsletter. And ideally, you're not just going to ask me to subscribe. You're going to tell me why I should subscribe. So, hey, subscribe to our newsletter. We'll send it 4 times per year, once per season or once per month, and you'll get exclusive offers, promotions, and behind the scenes, exclusivities and whatnot. So, okay, cool. I'm going to subscribe because people are not just going to come to your website. Oh, sure, I'm going to subscribe to another newsletter. There's got to be a reason behind it. Even better yet, when they're into your outlet or your hotel, your restaurant, your shop, you can have some kind of an incentive, like, hey, if while you're here today, we'll give you an extra 10% rebate or free Wi-Fi or such and such. If you just subscribe to our newsletter, you can always, unsubscribe later on. People usually don't. It's just the way the force of inertia. But so you want to sometimes have an incentive, but you want to capture email addresses because it's super important moving forward to send out emails. So just in the past year and a half, I've received emails like Hotel Nico in San Francisco. I was there maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Well, they sent an email in the past year saying, hey, despite of the pandemic, here's what's going on. We've got this commitment to cleanliness, and this is what we're doing during the pandemic. I'm like, okay, I wasn't intending on going to San Francisco anytime soon, but they're keeping me in the news. They're doing it at a fair pace. I got once or twice in the past year. They're not, if they were bombarding me every week, then I'd say, wow, that's too much. But they know probably they're doing segmenting. So it's outside of the country, maybe once a year. But if you've got a domestic clientele, maybe you'll want to send more regular information. If you're a restaurant, for example, maybe you're sending out a weekly menu or a monthly, here's the new menu we've got. And if you want to do delivery and orders, I subscribed to newsletter in the past year throughout the pandemic for local restaurants that I did not know of. And then I ordered the first time and I subscribed to the newsletter, and then they send me regularly their new menu, their new stuff. And I order from them more because I keep receiving their newsletter with novelties and what's going on. I might have ordered from others, but then I forgot about them because they don't send me information on what's new and exciting, and do they have a new menu that I might be interested in. So it's tangible money. It's a proven factor. Out of the 3 pillars that I showed you, the website, the email, and the social media, the email is the one that you'll get the most return on your investment by far. And this any marketer will tell you that. It's one of those, email's been around forever, right? Oh, isn't email dead? No, it's not dead. Make sure you capture the information from your client, and you're being savvy about how often you're going to send the news. If it's just once per season, 4 times a year, then start with that. If it could be 10 times per year, great. Do you have content? Of course. Some of you might, if you got a small company, maybe you don't have enough stuff to send out a weekly newsletter. Fine. But maybe once a month, 4 times a year, right? So make sure you got that information going out. Super important. And this is Marriott here, classic one, where they actually, during the pandemic, where, obviously people weren't going to hotels, was like, well, maybe we can have the hotel come to you. And then why don't you order online? We've got this e-commerce, and then you can order, pillows, you can order different fragrance, you can order this and that, bedding material. So that was a great example, I thought, of staying, again, top of mind, sending out information, and making sure, you're generating some revenue in this case. If you've got an online business that you might have developed in the past year, then that's one way to get people to don't forget about you. All right. All right. Then we move into social media, which is the last pillar. And then after that, we can have some examples we can discuss in the Q&A. But this is a great example that I saw in the earlier days of the pandemic, where Burger King came out with the social distancing Whopper, which was basically triple the amount of onions. So you make sure to keep others away from you. So that was before the mask became a thing. But you like that because it's cute, right? It's got that. And this is why often we talk about social media, we talk about creating content, we talk about storytelling. This is a great example. You're going to create content, but we try to be, if you can be quirky, you want to be out there, you want people to smile. That's what social media is about. It's not just about, we've got the Whopper, it's $3.99. That's boring. That's the price. That's what people want to know, but what else can you tell me about it, right? So what's the story behind it? A great example of a local DMO here in the province of Quebec, where they were saying, and it's in French here, but it's saying, make sure that 2 meters or 6 feet distance. This is, what does that represent? And in the early days, we didn't really realize what it was. So what's the equivalent of a beluga? And of course, they're using features of their destination. So it was the equivalent of a baby beluga, or it was the equivalent of, I think, 2 deers. And they had all a series of things like that. And then they got copied many other destinations and industries. I've seen similar concept. So it's just a way of, again, they put that on Instagram and on Facebook and on their different channels on their website. But it's a cute way of getting a dull message across, right? That, yeah, the social distancing is important, but in a destination such as ours, that's got big white spaces, well, this is how we do it. So again, ideas that can be done. Of course, after that, you want to do different content. So sometimes it'll be images, sometimes it'll be in the stories, it can be in the newsfeed. It can be a video, it can be a tweet. So here you got an example on the left-hand side. Tourism Montreal was sharing a video on their Twitter account. So again, cross-referring to different channels about the fact that, summer is back, you can travel. And likewise here, the Quebec City Conference Center was saying, what will post-COVID be like in terms of business and incentive industry or the meeting industry? And so they asked me to write an article for their magazine. So it was a magazine that was featured, and they had the link, and they used that on their Twitter and their LinkedIn. So you're seeing how they're using the same content, but using it across different platforms. So it's a way of what I call cross-promoting content, but also it's storytelling. It's storytelling in its most purest form. On Facebook, one of the features that is still to this day the most underutilized is Facebook Live. And I mean, in the past year, I've done so many. I mean, this was with PAX News, for example. We did a whole series of them the summer of 2020. Did a few in 2021, but less. But I'm seeing in the last couple of weeks, more and more people doing Facebook Lives, like sales reps, for example, for their products, doing it on LinkedIn as well, because now LinkedIn has a live feature. You can do lives on Instagram. So basically, what's the right tool for your audience? There's no right answer here, but you want to make sure you test them out. So one of the benefits, for example, of doing a live on Facebook, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that the people who follow your page get notified. Hey, by the way, PAX News right now is live. They're doing this feature on this. And so if I haven't interacted with the Facebook page of PAX News in a while, it's quite probable that I'm not seeing their content anymore. That's the way the algorithm works, right? But they're doing a live, and I happen to open up my Facebook and I see that they're doing a live, so I go and check it out. Well, they just brought me back. So that means tomorrow's content and the following day's content that they will do, there's a higher chance that it will pop up into my newsfeed. So it's not just the fact that you're getting me to watch that live per se. It's also the fact that you're reigniting me. You're bringing me back to your page, which the algorithm factors in so that it makes it interesting, again, to get better engagement levels on your pages, because it is a challenge. The algorithms are tough on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The content is being more and more tough to bring out there. So that's one way to get it done. And then you want to use the different features that these platforms can provide, right? So on Instagram 2-3 years ago was pretty basic, but then you could post basically, images and then a bit of videos, but videos were really not popular. And then they started with the stories back in 2016. And then they had the videos that you can upload more than 1 minute through IGTV back in 2018. And then last year, 2020, they introduced the Reels, which is basically TikTok. It's the exact same. If you're familiar with TikTok, it's exactly the same thing. It's a knockoff, but it's on Instagram, and it is coming to Facebook in coming days and weeks as well. So I like this example from Gem Bistro that basically has some information. So you see they've got a whole slew of stories that they've highlighted at the top, behind the scenes, desserts, shout out, store, baking, etc. But they also have posts, they have reels, they've got IGTV videos, they've been tagged in many publications, and they also have guides, which is not a feature available to all accounts, but they've got 2 guides that are there that can also provide more information. So use the features that are native in those platforms to your advantage. And too often we tend to sort of fall on the same tracks. On Facebook, well, we post on Facebook and that's all we do. Oh, we don't like the stories. We don't like the, well, try them out at least once or twice to see. You may not like it. You may say, didn't work out, but at least you tried it. And this is really the message I want to bring out here. The variety of content is key to success on social media. There's another example here. I think it's folks at Kilter Brewing, where they've got these stories highlighted as well. And I do believe that they do have reels as well. No, in this case, they actually have a boutique. This is what I like, is they actually have e-commerce, because on Facebook and on Instagram, you can activate your e-commerce, you can have a boutique, and it's not necessarily where you're going to generate gazillion dollars, okay? But it's one more way for people to know about some of the brands you have. And the algorithm here again for Facebook and Instagram is starting more and more to push all these e-commerce functionalities and features into people's newsfeed, newsfeed and whatever they see on both platforms. So very interesting to see. That's one great way of doing it. This is the one I was referring to, that Prairie Berry has actually an account as well on Instagram, but you see that they've actually done a reel recently. And I'm going to show you, if you're not familiar with what a reel is, it's very simple. If you're not familiar with what a TikTok is, this is what it looks like. It's exactly it right now.
Something so beautiful. We are onto something so good. We are onto something so beautiful.
There you go. It's not more complicated than that. If you've got a phone and you've got different videos, different images, you just put them together, and then you've got 15 seconds or 60 seconds on TikTok, up to 3 minutes. Actually, on Instagram, I believe it's only 15 seconds still. And some accounts have the availability to go up to 60 seconds. And then you just put a song behind, and there's a couple of special effects you can use, but that's it. And then the message, and then that is being highly promoted by the Instagram algorithm. So if you do content like that, it'll get seen by quite a few people. So why wouldn't you try it out, right? So again, I mean, the message here that I'm trying to get across is that, you know, the situation is difficult in general in the travel industry. We are into some kind of new normal. The health concerns, cleanliness, that's all going to remain, and it is what people are looking for. That's why I was saying security is the new marketing. It's now, you know, the number one and number two features, according to Expedia, that we are looking for even before the price. So in what we communicate, we need to reinstate that confidence, reassure, educate, but we also need to be in the storytelling. You've seen an example there. It's about empathy, but it's also about telling the story of what it is that you sell, the services, how you're different. So there you go. I mean, this is really the message that I wanted to get across in today's presentation. I mean, there's so many more examples I guess we could have used, but I want to open up the floor and see if you've got some questions and comments. There were earlier on. I do believe I've addressed them, but we do have some time planned to have this discussion. So if you want to activate your screen, I mean, your video so we can see you, and your microphone. If you want to ask a question, by all means. If you want to ask your question in French, vous êtes les bienvenus également. So, lo podemos hacer en español también si quieren, but I'm not sure how that's going to work. We'll see. So any questions on what we saw on the 3 pillars on the website, on the email side, or on the social media? Is that something we're all doing? We're all clear on?
J'ai une question, Frédéric.
Oui.
Par rapport à ton expérience en travaillant avec des entreprises touristiques qui doivent gérer tout un aspect opérationnel qui prend beaucoup de temps, et puis justement assurer cette présence sur le web, que ce soit leur site internet. Combien de temps tu suggérerais passer sur les réseaux sociaux? Parce que de plus en plus, on s'aperçoit que ça devient des jobs à part entière.
C'est une excellente question. Shall I answer it in English?
Yes, maybe in English. Yeah, sorry.
So the question is basically, how much time